To understand the prophecies in the Holy Scriptures, we must understand that sometimes when the prophets have visions, those visions are sometimes not in chronological order. Sometimes the prophets tell about a vision and next time they might jump to another vision, or sometimes they might go back to another vision. This is where most scholars get confused and misinterpret the visions of the prophets. Here in this teaching, I will only focus on the whore of Babylon, the Antichrist, and the false prophet, and not the whole book of the revelation of Apostle John. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. 7 crowns on its heads represents the 7 continents of this world. Satan has authority and is Lord of the earth. The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. It could mean days of weeks, or years. This will happen in a Shemitah. It is the sabbatical years. They're in sets of 7 years, all the way up to the year of Jubilee. 7 times 7 years plus 1 year. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. At this time, the Mahdi does not yet rule the world, but only his caliphate in the beginning of the 7 years of his reign. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. This is the false prophet that our Messiah Yeshua warned us about in the chapter of Matthew 24:4-26. He is the Islamic Jesus that they have been waiting for. They call him Isa. His role is to bring everyone into the faith of Islam and to worship the Mahdi, the first beast. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. At that time, if anyone says to you, "Look, here is the Messiah," or "There he is," do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, "There he is out there in the wilderness," do not go out. "Here he is in the inner room," do not believe it. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. At this time, the 2 witnesses of God will start their witnessing for 42 months.
And I will appoint my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. They are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands, and they stand before the Lord of the earth. We will go and look at the correct words for this verse. Some versions have it as, who are standing by, beside, or to serve, which is incorrect for this passage, because this passage is talking about the Antichrist and not Yeshua, Jesus. Because Yeshua is not there yet when the 2 witnesses comes to witness for 1,260 days. So to put this in the correct translation and perspective, the word should be against, because they are anointed by God to come down, not to stand by, not to serve, as some translators use, but they are there to come against the Antichrist, to preach against him, the Lord of the earth, because he was given power and authority from the dragon, Satan, Allah. During the time the 2 witnesses are witnessing, the Antichrist has no power over them. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. They have power to shut up the heavens so that it will not rain during the time they are prophesying. And they have power to turn the waters into blood, and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute, who sits by many waters. With her the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes, of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Yeshua. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. waters that you saw where the whore is sitting are peoples, crowds, nations, and languages. And the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth.
So, don't let anyone ever tell you that this country isn't great. That somehow we need to make it great again. Because this right now is the greatest country on earth.
The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The inhabitants of the earth whose names has not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet it will come. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings, or kingdoms. And one is, alive and ruling during John's time. The other has not yet come, but when he does come, he must remain for a little while.
Allahu Akbar.
The beast who once was, and now is not, is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. In the Islamic Quran, they say that their Mahdi must come from the bloodline of Muhammad. Also, they say that their Mahdi will be killed in the 7th or the 8th year of his reign. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. This is how we know that the Islamic Mahdi is the Antichrist, who will reign for 7 to close to 8 years. All the shipmasters, passengers, sailors, and everyone making his living from the sea stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke as she burned. What city was like the great city? And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned. There's no more United States to protect Israel. Now the Antichrist will go to Israel and take over Jerusalem. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. After 3.5 years, the Mahdi, Antichrist, will break the covenant that he made with many nations concerning Israel and Jerusalem. Now when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the public square of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom in Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, and language and nations will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts, because these 2 prophets had tormented those who lived on the earth. After 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud, while their enemies looked on. But exclude the courtyard outside the temple. Do not measure it, because it has been given over to the nations, and they will trample over the holy city for 42 months. Forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. Let no one deceive you in any way, for it will not come until the rebellion occurs, and the man of lawlessness is revealed. This is when the Antichrist will start to rule the world for 42 months. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times and a half a time. He will alter times. He will force everyone to use the Islamic calendar, which is according to the lunar calendar, and he will change the laws by forcing everyone to follow the Sharia laws. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Whoever has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patience, endurance, and faithfulness on the part of God's people. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast, or the number, or the multitude of its name. Here in Revelation 13:17, the word in Greek for number is arithmos. But the problem here is that there are two meanings for this word, and the other one is multitude. So here in this verse should have been, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is in the name of the beast, or the multitude of his name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. Here again, the translators used the wrong word for this verse. I will show you the words used by the translators and the other words that should have been used for this verse. Now the correct translation should be, Here's wisdom. Let him that has understanding decide the multitude of the beast, for it is the multitude of a man, and his multitude is in the name of Allah.
Apostle John is trying to warn us that we cannot join in with Islam and that we cannot declare allegiance to Allah or the Mahdi and his false prophet.
At the latter part of the reign, the Antichrist and the false prophet will be killed by our Messiah Yeshua. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Then I saw the beasts and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to wage war against the rider on the horse and his army. But the beast was captured, and with it the false prophet who had performed the signs on its behalf. With these signs he had deluded those who had received the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The two of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake of burning sulfur. The rest were killed with a sword coming out of the mouth of the rider on the horse, and all the birds gorged themselves on their flesh.
Mm-hmm.